Hello, my name is Latoya Ray. I am an advanced nurse education student at Winston-Salem State University, and today I will be discussing domestic violence. So, my first slide describes different types of violence, which I will go into more detail for each one as we go through the presentation. Some of those will be things like emotional abuse, spiritual abuse, sexual, physical, psychological. So, recognizing an abuser. Abusers believe that they have more worth than you. They show it in a way that they believe they have a right to treat you as less important than themselves, and how they act as though your purpose in life is to help make their life easier, and that your opinion is not as valuable as theirs is. This is just one of the signs, and this is a quote that is from Darlene Unmet. So this is a chart that's talking about the escalation of violence. So most of us start at a continuum of 100 to 0. 100 should be where we want to be, self-loving, being loved by our partners. 0 is going to be death. So as the violence increases, the value of life decreases. So let's just take a look here. So we start 100, which is where we want to be. About 75 is where we're getting some insulting or some name calling. Around here, destroying a property, this level becomes kind of physical. You know that things are starting to escalate to the point where it's going to be physical. So 50 is threatening or harming your pets. So now we're going to be talking about harming things that are important to you. Say I'm going to hurt your animal because you did something and it's causing me to be angry with you. When we get around 25, we're talking about hitting walls or breaking objects or hitting you at this point. And when we get to 0, we're talking about serious injury and death. So if you're a victim or the cause of any of the following, let us get you back to 100 before anyone reaches 0. So we're going to talk about some of the phases of abuse. When you start up here in the honeymoon phase, this is when the abuser is feeling some type of jealousy. They're wanting to know where you are all the time. They're calling you saying, well, it didn't take that long for you to go to the store. They're timing you, saying, well, why did you have to go over to such and such and such and such house? You must love them more than me. In this part of the phase, the victim hopes that the abuse is over and the abuser may give gifts to the victim. We're going to talk about the gifts in just a second. We're going now to the tension building phase. This is where minor things start to occur. You're hearing some name calling. This person is making you feel like you're walking on eggshells. You're constantly saying, oh, I shouldn't say that because he might get mad, or I better not do that, or oh, is the house clean enough for him, or did I do my hair right? The explosive phase is when the person is actually starting to damage property or to hit you. They're causing some serious bodily injury by this point. Once we get past the explosion phase, we'll come to the reconciliation phase. This is when the person shows up and they're so sorry, saying, I won't ever do this again. Showing up with gifts and flowers and crying and things of that sort, causing you to let your guard down and let them back in again. And this cycle just starts to repeat over and over and over again. So emotional abuse is one of the types of abuse that is really kind of hard to decipher or discern because it's so subtle. It's name calling. It's threatening to hurt you. It is making you feel less than what you are. It's really bringing your self-esteem down. And in abuse, it starts on it's a process. So what happens is the person is trying to get you to feel like your self-worth is getting lower and lower and lower, because eventually the person has control over you and they can start to implement control efforts on you, and then eventually some type of physical abuse. So the first kind of abuse we're going to talk about today is knowing the signs and symptoms of elderly abuse, because I know in the nursing field, a lot of us work with the elderly, and it's not always an easy thing to be able to decipher. So there are some signs and symptoms that we want to look for as far as elder abuse goes. So elder abuse relationship to the victim. A large majority of that is from their own children. As you see here, it's 47% of the abuser is the child. Next, it is their spouse, grandchildren. We got friends and neighbors. I know a lot of us, we think out of the home, inside of the nursing home is a lot of the percentage that we see. We're scared to put our family members in the nursing home because of reports of abuse. But this chart shows you that most of the abuse goes on right inside of the house, and you may not even know what's happening. So it's our job to be really good assessors to make sure that we know all the signs and symptoms of abuse. So let's talk about the 6 types of abuse. We have the physical, which is the actual hitting. We've got sexual, which is engaging in sexual behavior that is unwanted or unwarranted by the elderly person. Emotional, again, is the name calling, belittling, acting as though you're going to hit them. Neglect is depriving them of nutritional needs, grooming needs, medical needs. We have the abandonment, which just means that this person may not be able to care for themselves at home, and we are not checking on them. They're at home by themselves. They can't cook for themselves. They can't take care of themselves, and we've left them at home to fend for themselves, and they're unable to do that. And the last type of abuse for elder is financial, which is taking advantage of their financial means of living, their social security check, their disability check, and not using it to care for the elderly person. I'm sorry, yes, you have a question in the back? Oh yes, we're going to talk a little bit more about services for the elderly in just a second, and I'll give you some of those resources that will be helpful for the caregiver and for the elderly person, okay? All right, so we're going to talk about behavioral indicators of abuse and neglect. So being withdrawn, being fearful, having some type of depression, implausible stories. So if this person is saying, oh, I have this bruise because I bumped into the wall, or oh, I have this burn on my hand because the water was too hot and I didn't know. You have this constant look of fear on their faces when you see them. It's as though they may want to tell you they're just scared, especially if the abuser is with them. Maybe you want to have them step to the side, or ask the family member to leave the room so that you're able to ask them, is there any type of abuse going on in the house, and this is a safe place for you to be able to discuss those issues. So 11 things that anyone can do to prevent elder abuse. So one of those things would be to learn the signs and symptoms of abuse. So some of those things I just mentioned on the previous slide. We want to call and visit the elderly person on a regular basis. We don't want them to be abandoned, and we don't want them to have to try to fend for themselves if they're not able to do so. So going to check on them often would be a wonderful idea. This is where I'm going to answer your question about the respite. You want to provide respite breaks for the caregiver. So there are places here in Forsyth County. One of those places is called Senior Services. It's over off of Coliseum Drive. This person is a care coordinator there at the office who is able to coordinate services for the elderly. There's lots of services that are available for seniors, and respite care is one of those things. And respite just means that you're giving the caregiver a break, because there's a thing called caregiver burnout that you want to be cognizant of, because that is a hard job. It's like taking care of a child when you have an elderly person in the house who is unable to care for themselves like they used to be able to. And especially if that caregiver still has to go to work, if the person has Alzheimer's disease, things of that sort will really burn someone out, and respite services are definitely needed. So you want to ask your doctor to assist you and all other senior patients about possible family violence in the home. So if you're suspecting that there's some type of violence, please report. We're going to talk about that a little bit later in the presentation, but yes, if you suspect that there's any type of abuse going on in the home or at the nursing home, please report that. So here we go, talking about the nursing home abuse and neglect. This is the one that everybody likes to talk so much about, and it does happen. Some signs and symptoms of nursing home abuse are very similar to the ones we discussed in the previous slide. Some common signs of neglect would be bed sores. This is when you know that the person is not being turned often. They've been sitting or laying in a place on a bony prominence for a long period of time. That is definitely a clear sign of some type of neglect. Dirty bedding and clothing. This person looks malnourished. They have poor hygiene. Things of that sort will definitely alert you to some type of neglect or abuse, and these are things you want to report. So a couple of statistics over here. 90% of the nursing homes do not have adequate staff. So that would be a wonderful, not explanation, but it would be a reason why some of these people are not getting the care that they need. The insufficient staff at the nursing home will definitely cause the staff members to feel overworked, stressed, agitated, will possibly lead into some type of violence or abuse for that elderly person. So getting adequate staff is definitely a thing we want to look and make sure that we have some adequate staff at the nursing home. So preventing elder abuse and neglect requires 3 action steps. So first, we want to listen to our seniors. They're very valuable with the information that they can give us. They know that some things are going on with them that shouldn't be going on. If their money is not getting spent correctly, they're not eating, listen to them. We want to intervene when we suspect that there's some elder abuse. So this is when we have that duty and responsibility to report. Educate others about how to recognize and report elder abuse. So if you're at the nursing home, you want to discuss this with staff members at the nursing home and even family members. If people are coming over to visit and that person is just not looking the same, or they're looking malnourished, teaching them what kind of signs and symptoms to look for, and how to report that and who to report that to. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. Child abuse. So this is another epidemic that is happening here. As you see, I have a little hand around his neck. It's got words on it because abuse for the child is not just physical, it is mental and verbal also. So types of abuse. The biggest chunk here for abuse would be neglect. This is the child not eating. They're not having good hygiene at school. So you'll see these children come to school and look very unkept. Clothes are dirty. They're really hungry. They have dirty faces, things of that sort. We've got the physical. Sexual abuse is 9.2. We've got some psychological maltreatment, which means that we're calling the children names, saying they're stupid, you're not worth anything, things of that sort. This is a questionnaire or a scale to determine the likelihood of some type of abuse happening in the home. So the first 4 questions here are mutually inclusive, which just means that if we answer yes to this question at the top, then we're going to have to answer the next question. They all kind of lead into one another. They have a Likert scale to find out the severity of the abuse. So one of the things would be, is the male partner younger than 30 years old? That's a big indicator that there might be some abuse going on. Is he just a boyfriend or a girlfriend? Are they, do they have a history of some kind of alcohol or drug abuse? These are all indicators that, child might be in danger. Is the child less than 5? These are all, the more questions we answer yes to, the more likely we're going to see some type of abuse in the house. So teen violence is something that is not new, but it is becoming more talked about now because I think teens at this point, in their growth and development, they are wanting those relationships with the opposite sex. They, love all the attention, the phone calls, the showing up at the house unexpectedly. These are all signs for them of love and affection, where, excessive attention, harassment, looking through phones or emails without permission. These are all signs of some type of abuse. And it's not only important for the teen to understand the signs and symptoms, but also the parents, because ultimately they're still adolescents and they're under their parents' care. So parents need to know the signs and symptoms also so that they can intervene. I'm sorry, yes. Yeah, sure. Because of technology, in order to find out some of the facts about teen abuse, you don't have to go to a place in order to get the information. There are lots of resources online that you're able to look up, scales and questionnaires, because if you suspect that there's some kind of abuse, then it's a great way for you just to kind of fill out a questionnaire just to see if maybe the next step needs to be taken. And we'll talk about some of those resources here in the community that you can go and visit in just a second. So what are some of the facts? Youth ages 16 to 24 are more vulnerable to intimate partner violence than any other age group at almost triple the national average. Very compelling and interesting. 1 in 3 high school students has been or will be in an abusive relationship. So it's really important that we understand that, that's a large number of folks who are in danger of becoming abused. And there's several different ramifications from that. There's a higher risk of substance abuse, higher risk of some type of sexual abuse, suicidal behavior, eating disorders, things of that sort. So again, some warning signs of abuse: checking that cell phone or email without permission, wrestling, especially if you're telling the person, stop, I don't want to do that anymore, some type of explosive mood swings, keeping you isolated from your friends and family. These are all common abusive behaviors that we want to be cognizant of. Here's just a flyer that sums up all of those things that I described to you a few minutes ago. Just a nice little example of signs and symptoms, things that can happen if you are suspecting that you are being in an abusive relationship. So here is a questionnaire, one of those that I explained earlier that you could look up on the internet. Am I being abused? So they say that actually I have a couple of pamphlets here that I picked up from an agency here in Winston-Salem that I will tell you a little bit more about in just a second. But if you have 5 or more of these checked off, then you're probably in an abusive relationship, and this is time for you to take the next step. So the services, like I said, here in Forsyth County would be Safe on 7. This is a division of the Forsyth County Courthouse. It's on the 7th floor. The floor is filled with services, social workers, legal aid, counseling. They have all of those services there, questionnaires and information pamphlets they can give to you. so that you are aware of some danger signs. If you may need to report these things to the police department. They also give you something called a stalking harassment incident report, because if there's no physical harm being done to you at this point, but you are worried and scared, you can have a log of all of the incidents that have been happening, that you can have a little bit more proof to give to the police, let them know that some suspicious or some dangerous behavior has been happening. They also have a Winston-Salem Department of Domestic Violence unit that you can call, and they on their website have a couple of places that have information about a safety plan and information about signs and symptoms of abuse there. How to keep yourself and loved ones safe. So when you're in a fight with this person, you want to make sure that you are not in a small space, such as the kitchen or the bathroom. You want to stay away from any sharp objects. So you want to have access to an exit. You don't want one way in and one way out. You want to let your neighbors know what's going on. If you decide you want to leave, make sure that you have some money saved up. You have an action plan in place, a safety plan, an escape route in the house, just in case you and your children have to leave in a hurry. You want to practice that plan so that when it's time, then you can just, get up and go. Ways to stay safe on your own. You want to change the locks in the house. If that person is no longer living in the home, you want to let your neighbors know that, I am no longer with this person. I feel threatened and endangered, and I feel like my family and I are in danger, and you have someone to make sure that they are cognizant of what's happening. Family services shelters. There are some shelters out there open 365 days out of the year. They have educational programs there, temporary shelter for you and your children if you are in that situation where you don't have any place else to go and you are fearful of going home. So what is the responsibility for you as the nurse? You are required by law to report these things. Even if nothing is happening, if you suspect that there's any abuse happening, please let someone know. It is not a crime for you to be suspicious and to call. Be safer. It's better to be safe than sorry. There's no excuses for failing to report. There's no reason that you shouldn't report. Don't ever feel as though, well, that's not my concern, because it is. You as the nurse, this is your responsibility to make sure that that patient is safe at all times. You cannot be punished for reporting. It says that when you file a report, you are presumed to have acted in good faith, and that's something that we as nurses, when we took our oath, said that we would do. We would make sure that our patients were safe. So please, even if there's nothing happening, we want to make sure that we have done everything that we can in order to make sure that they're safe. Your identity will not be reported to anyone. It's confidential. So if you're going to make a report, you're not going to be in fear of being found out about. So don't not report because you think that they're going to tell that person that it was you. So I want to leave you with a poem. Do you know how much you hurt me? Do you even care? I've cried so many tears and it's just not fair. The pain I feel deep inside doesn't go away. The shame you placed upon me remains to this day. I was never good enough for you, no matter how I tried. Tonight I sit in despair, wishing I would have died. You took my love and stomped on it and threw it all away. And now I try my best just to make it through the day. So this is someone who's been living with abuse, and this is how they feel after everything is said and done. So I just want to leave you with that. And that is the end of my presentation. So if there's no more questions or concerns, I want to say thank you and have a wonderful day.